So, like Desert and Eric, I need you guys to break apart and disseminate this list. Eric, I'm going to have you go first since you're the leader.
Yeah.
Or Eric, if you had one to add, I'd be interested in hearing it. Keep that in the back of your head. If you have one we left out, by all means, let us know.
Well, first of all, I would say if I'm going to go ahead, I'll just go line by line. I'll start with code of conduct. You say 1A code of conduct. So this would be, I'm presuming, First Amendment auditors code of conduct. I'll say that codes of conduct have come and gone. You know, when everybody got together during Occupy in Minneapolis, they made this St. Paul's agreement with protest groups because each person had their own kind of way. No, we all want to agree that we do it this way. Everybody agreed to do it this way, and it was a big fucking disaster, and then everybody did their own thing. Remember that this is a lot like trying to herd cats. And then I think that we have to define what a First Amendment audit is. I was just asked this by the Brighton Blade newspaper the other day. It said, so would you consider yourself to be a First Amendment auditor? And I said, well, I'm not particularly fond of labels generally. I realize that they have to exist. And so I guess we have to decide what an audit is. So to me, an audit, and like Teresa says, you need it to be organic. If you're going to have an organic audit, then you need to just stand back and observe. That's it. To me, an audit is an evaluation of record that has already happened. We're going to examine the breadcrumbs. We're going to examine the records. We're going to examine the fallout of some sort of action, some sort of work by some group of people or persons. And these audits are done silently. They're done in the background. They're done after the fact. And then you write a report on it. So then you have an examination. An examination to me is where you insert a stressor. Now you walk into a police department's lobby with a camera in your hand and you start filming everything. You are a stressor. That's not really an audit. That's more of an examination. When you create the stressor in the environment and then you evaluate how the subjects respond to that stressor.
Agreed.
Beyond an audit.
Agreed.
So, yeah. And I'm presuming when we say First Amendment auditor, we actually mean an examiner. And then you have those assholes that we call protesters. They just go in and fuck everything up. They go in with the intention of disrupting the normal routine with the auspicious guise of hopefully communicating some sort of message or raising some sort of concern or issue. So I do draw, in my mind, a difference between an auditor, an examiner, and a demonstrator. Usually I find myself falling more in the demonstrator side of things than I do on the auditing side of things. So I think we kind of have to define what the term is before we can agree to a code of conduct, because if you think that I'm going to agree to your First Amendment auditing code of conduct when I'm intending to go in there and disrupt some shit, then we're going to have a little bit of a problem, and our expectations of each other are going to be off, and we're not going to get along.
Yes, I also I would classify myself as an activist. I think by definition, a cop watcher just watches and does not open his fucking mouth. So by definition, I can't be a cop watcher. I must be something else. I would classify myself an activist, and I was throwing myself on that list.
Joe, we agreed that if someone doesn't follow this code of conduct, we can do a citizen's arrest on them, right?
Absolutely not.
I agree to that.
Absolutely not.
No shit.
Can I add something? Can I add something really quickly? Because I would agree with what Eric says, you know, and classifying different aspects of activism and different ways that you can do it. You know, you might be protesting or you know, but whatever. But in the course of history, you know, some of the most major changes with regards to protesting, you know, and what have you, you know, had a whole lot of planning behind it. You know, a whole lot of planning went into the protests, went into, if for instance, civil rights movement, there were lots and lots of planning meetings that were held before a lot of these protests and marches were even held. There were lots and lots of planning meetings that were held before anyone ever got on a bus to ride down south. There were, a lot of organization behind the effort so that they could get the maximum amount of change out of each one of those actions. And I think a lot of people, a lot of activists will go into this without a clear plan, and just, the passion that gets combined with the anger. I think that's a lot of time what can cloud those types of protests or those types of actions when you want to just jump right into them and just do it this way without, number one, doing your homework. Number two, don't call the police on yourself. Maintain your self-control. Choose your battles wisely and, build relationships before you go into this. There's a lot of planning that has, in the course of history, in the course of great changes, there was a lot of planning that went into those things, and I think that that's something that a lot of activists, a lot of communities lack. Just simply because we can't all always get along, but there needs to be some planning. And I think these kind of 5 little basic things are something that maybe we can all agree on in every aspect of activism.
Joe, we're gonna have you. Joe, I'm gonna have you respond, and then I set no line. I'm gonna have him jump in after you, Joe.
I think you were saying that excludes passion and anger. I don't know if any of this gets done without passion and anger at least being a spark.
I don't no, I don't want to begrudge that. People are passionate, and I don't begrudge them passionate, doing this. But I passion can be anger, and passion can be love, and passion can be a lot of things. And I think whenever you're passionate, angrily passionate, it can cloud your judgment. That's all.
Agreed, but it sparks this type of shit. It's the driving force. It is the catalyst all the fucking time. I hate to even admit that because I want to be that Gandhi nigga in the end. But
you still have to maintain self-control. You still have to be able to maintain your self-control.
It doesn't negate anything you said. Agreed. Everything you said.
Mr. Sentinel, what do you think about this list? Are you proud of us?
I was going over it. And Eric, it's been a while. How are you, sir?
It has been a while. How are you?
All right. Yeah, Eric and I used to have late night talks in the wee hours of the morning.
Well, we can we can bring that back with El Sancho. Let's do it. Fuck yeah, Joe's down. I'm down. Let's do it.
I'm down.
Same place every time, every night. Let's fucking do it.
And
yeah, I don't know if I'm reliable enough for that.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out if you're gonna come to Sancho Court tomorrow for your boy Liberty Bird. We don't know about that yet.
Oh yes, Eric.
Well, I don't know. I definitely have a lot of work that I have to do too. So I have to limit my appearance. But they could snatch me off the street any day now.
So, Mr. Sentinel, go ahead. Sorry, we cut you off.
Well, listening to Eric, and fundamentally, I have to say that Eric and I do agree on many things. In fact, Mr. Sancho, if you do remember the reference that I made to you before you even started this stream about these codes of conducts have come and gone, and I also made the reference to cat herding, Eric, to him.
You did.
That's funny.
That's why I thought it was crazy.
That is pretty incredible.
And
I don't think there's anything wrong with us having this discussion. There's lots. It's all going to come and go, but I like this discussion.
Yeah,
I'm the eternal optimist too. Just because it hasn't been accomplished before them, it does not mean a thing with me, Jack.
And
failed miserably, learn from it and move on.
Oh yeah. And I really do enjoy hearing Eric speaking of how the differences between what certain individuals are doing out there, and that audits should be organic. And when you bring the stressors in, that is not really a proper audit. Now, one of the things
but that doesn't mean it's not a proper action.
No. I'm not saying it's not a proper action. It's
yes.
Well, I'll be honest. I would refine
scenario.
I think that I would refine that list a little bit. I mean, I think honestly, from my perspective, right, and maybe this is the point we're all making at this point. I only agree with 2.5 things on there.
You helped build the fucking list.
I did, but you got to realize that you did this by a group consensus,
Hold
right?
on,
So
hold on.
No, I didn't. No, time out. So pull up the list, and I'll show you what I mean.
Hold on. I'm gonna pull up the list, but I'm gonna slowly mention how coincidental, how on board you were. Then all of a sudden, two of the OGs come in, and you don't like the fucking list because they don't like the fucking list.
No, check this out. So I'll be honest. Like the two things that I really agree with here, dude. The major points that I would say I agree with is do your homework and be prepared for the consequences.
Self-control is not important.
Well, no, because I think that all depends on whether or not you're being lawfully or unlawfully detained.
Well, we have a poster boy of self-control on panel, Mr. Eric Brandt. Talk about self-control.
I'm the poster boy for self-control.
I know. I was sarcastic. As soon as I mentioned the word self-control.
I think Teresa R. is the poster child for self-control. I'm just saying. It's not.
Hey, I was pretty good at that.
Okay. Well, so I haven't even made it past the title of our list yet before I destroyed the rest of them. Do your homework and research. I don't know many people that do as much homework and research as I do. They're out there. That doesn't mean I always get it right. But I can tell you that I spent a lot more time in the law library than I have on the gun range. So I'm a lot better at handling myself in court than I am at making people leak. But you need to do your homework. You need to do your research. It's very important. It's very complicated, and I'm constantly learning every day. And if you talk to the people that know me closely, I spend a lot of time on these computer screens reading all day. That's the only way to get through this. I had 4 crates, those big foot lockers full of legal paperwork while I was in jail. You have to do your homework. You have to do your research. Maintain self-control, sure, to the best of your ability. Yes, I skipped one on purpose. Choose your battles wisely. Not always easy to do. And yeah, you have to be prepared for the consequences. And the problem is that the consequences are so severe in some cases that most people can't do this. Otto the Watchdog learned that the hard way. He barely did a damn thing to them fuckers, and they took his kids away. They keep changing his court dates. When you have something, the FBI doesn't want you to have a family for a reason, right? And one of the reasons why I continue to do my work is because I don't have that. And I think that limits a lot of people's voice. I think that I have to be a voice for more people than I would otherwise want to be, because they truly can't speak up. They've already taken on responsibilities in their life, and they can't sacrifice those responsibilities for a new one. It's really hard to choose that battle, and it's really hard to be prepared for the consequences. Build relationships. I tend to be a relationship builder. I don't hold a lot of grudges. I have a few, not very many, and most of those grudges I'm not particularly pleased with. I have not burned a lot of bridges behind me. There's been a few that I have burned gloriously, and generally I have done that with the deliberacy to make sure that bridge never gets built again.
But with regret, Eric, with regret, even though you did it deliberately, can you still have regret?
I don't really like to hold grudges, Joe. I'm not really an enemy kind of person. I think that those of you that have been out here and seen things going on in the Denver area, we've been in close contact with us. I think that most people would agree that I tend to quell a lot of discomfort and a lot of argument. And I'm like, because I really kind of like to give people deference to be themselves. And I know that that's not obvious when you look at my work. You might not, when I'm out there screaming at the cops, presumably out of control, that I'm a relationship builder. But the only reason I've made it this far is because I've got a lot of insiders. I got a lot of people watching my back, and I have built relationships in places you wouldn't even believe. And so then that leads me to the do not call the police on yourself. If you are conducting an audit, an organic audit, then you should not be calling anyone. You should not even be noticed. So I suppose if it's a First Amendment audit or code of conduct, then I would say that yeah, that means that you can't call the police on yourself because you truly have to stay out of the view. You can't
And if
create a
it's not,
stressor.
and if it's not a First Amendment audit per se,
Oh, if it's not a First Amendment audit per se, then baby, all the stops are out. You know, it's important to me if I'm running around out there with a giant sign that says "fuck cops." It's important for me to know what dispatch is going to say to the people that are going to be calling in, because I've learned that I can generate over 30 calls per hour. Okay, so I go to an area like Adams County, Westminster area, where the market's pretty saturated. I'll occasionally call dispatch on myself just to see what dispatch is saying, because when I'm in a new area, it's different than when I'm in a saturated area. If I go into a new area, dispatch is going to send the police.
So
if I go to a saturated area, dispatch is going to educate me on the First Amendment. So when you realize that in an area where I have already built those relationships, I've already essentially won the First Amendment battle, why would I continue to go out there and do this? Why? Because I educate 30 people an hour on the First Amendment when they call dispatch. They're not going to get that education from me. They're calling the cops on me. So I need to know, I need to calibrate what dispatch is telling the people that are calling from that area. So I will occasionally call the police on myself. And you're goddamn right, I called the police on all you fuckers down in Rockwall County. Right? Yeah. I needed to know what the response was going to be. We needed to know one way or the other. So I do think that in the activism world, there may be definitely times when I think it's appropriate to call the police. But if we're setting a code of conduct for auditors and we're using the pure definition of an audit, which is not an involved process, you're not stressing the subjects that you're studying in an audit, then yeah, I think I could agree with that code of conduct. But if you're in the business of disrupting normal operations, which is exactly what you do when you spank a 2-year-old on the ass and send him to the corner.
Direct action.
That, I mean, you might just, calling the cops on yourself might just be appropriate. Is it ethical to call the cops on yourself for clicks and views? Well, I think that question may even be debatable.
So what would you and Desert grade this list? And I'm not going to pussy away like Liberty Bird. Everybody on this panel participated and agreed that this was the list.
Wait, I only agree with one.
Oh, come on.
see what I'm saying, though? I'm showing how quick disconnect can happen, though. Like when your perspective is not like fully, and you still conform to a group consensus, right? This is what happens. You wind up with two and a half things that you agree with, and 3 others that you don't agree with, and now all of a sudden we have something that everybody agreed on that nobody really agrees on.
I was joking.
No, but this is the same point.
I would like to add something.
I think that. 1 second. I think that this is the thing that Eric was pointing out in the first place. You know, is like these type of things have happened before, and this type of planning has happened before. But where it fails is by trying to accommodate everybody's opinion. There is no true way to get down to one way of doing things.
Yeah, I'll say it failed because them niggas weren't cold enough and didn't try hard enough. It wasn't enough wise men in that room.
So what grade would you give that, like Desert Sentinel, sorry?
Well, throw that list back up for me again real quick.
One more time. What do you think for a school teacher grade?
Well, I still haven't really had a full chance to really go over it in my perspective and my past behavior in that, looking at the first one here, doing your homework research. If people remember, I tested the waters of the prune yard decision out here in California concerning the case law on malls being traditional public forums, according to case law. And I did do my homework on that. And I did do my homework on the local malls. I looked up their codes of conduct. I found out who owned these malls. And I tested 3 ownerships of malls out here and found that they each had their own take. One mall I had no issue with. Another mall I was told to leave, and I and back down to the build relationships, I contacted their management. I spoke with their security, and they apologized for me being let out of the building. The only mall that I had issue with and couldn't get anywhere with was a mall that was owned by the government of Australia. It's actually a government-owned entity that owns several malls, including the mall in Palmdale, the Antelope Valley Mall.
Was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing, DS.
Yeah, and I could not get through to them. I couldn't understand, which brings us down to the issue of choosing your battles wisely. I did not get arrested. I did not get trespassed. I was just asked to not use my camcorder. I could use my cell phone. That was the major distinction. I tried to get them to understand that my cell phone could broadcast live to the world,
right,
in 4K definition. My camcorder goes nowhere. It's just a log, and all I was doing was walking my way to the food court, which is under that Pruneyard decision is a public forum, and I was going to do a blog. However, I was told I couldn't use that camcorder because it looked too professional. So I left. I left, and I still had standing. See, you don't necessarily have to be arrested to have standing. I know some people seem to think that they have a better position in filing suit, depending on whatever their plan is and what they want to do. But
they may have that, and we're battling a situation right now where the Colorado District Court is kicking back a suit that Abity Irizarry and I filed. We were detained at gunpoint for more than an hour. And then he issued a summons. And for some reason, the court's kicking it back and saying, oh, that's not a Fourth Amendment seizure because we weren't actually taken into custody. So there's some debatable question there as well. But
right.
But I don't want to detract from that.
No, you didn't detract. I thought I was just going to tell him, there's a Sentinel that you're right, that I've seen people go against, break that law because they thought that was how they got their standing. But if you're just forced under duress, you still have standing. But then Eric came up with another good point as well. So,
well, I wasn't out there to get arrested, and that leads to, you know, kind of the idea of when you're planning these things, that I went out there under a journalistic aspect. And I've seen a lot of people, especially recently with all of the protests, that people were actively protesting, you know, calling out slogans, whatever it may be. They weren't just documenting. However, later on, they tried to state that they were now media and just a journalist. And there were several arrests, including our mutual friend, Eric, that got arrested. I don't know where that is. But several people got arrested within a 48 hours that were past curfews or whatever. And I think you need to choose what you are. That's been a big beef with me on what you're out there to do. I was always out there testing my First Amendment rights as a journalist and using the journalistic code of conduct in my behavior.
I think that was my first beef with the list, was that what is the role? What are you trying to do? And I just don't feel that I'm qualified to judge what other people's motives and what other people's work is. So I think that having a First Amendment code of conduct as displayed there is not a bad guide. But when we impose that as some sort of an expectation on everybody, then at that point we're setting ourselves up to fail at step number 5, which is build relationships. You can't build relationships and have these strict expectations of the people that are in your group, right? I fell in love with Teresa R. when she did Stephanie Benoit. I think that's fantastic, but there were some people that were really upset with that work. And you know, I really try not to judge people and be too critical of their work. I try to support them in their work. You know, I think that a friend is not somebody that says, I told you so. A friend is somebody that says, come here, let's get you cleaned up, even if they told you so. So that's my only big beef with this code of conduct is that if it's too strictly adhered to, then it's good. Then it's definitely doomed to fail.
Imposing it on others.
Exactly. And even over
yes,
strictly
I would
imposing
agree.
it upon ourselves.
And our whole thing was, is this possible? And I thought we were leaving room in there, and we even talked about leaving room for all types. So I guess what we failed was our definition.
I want to add something. I want to add something about what Eric said about, you know, particularly calling the police on yourself. And my issue, even, you know, even if it's part of whatever action you're doing, you know, anytime you have an interaction with the police, I mean, it is really like, you know, playing Russian roulette, because you never, first off, know who you're going to get. You don't. And, you know, my thing and my goal is to not have to interact with them any longer than I absolutely have to. And so, you know, that's another problem I have with people calling the police on themselves, because it doesn't lead to anything but trouble.
I think that that's a very valid point. I think every time you expose yourself to the government, you're exposing yourself to liability. There's no question. But I still do think that there are times when I think that calling the police on yourself is creating the stressor that you might be looking for. Sometimes getting arrested for something is the stressor you're looking for. I absolutely made them arrest me for sitting down on the ground, because it was a law you couldn't sit on the ground. I set up a box trap with a donut under it. I wrote Acme Cop Catcher Kit on the back, and I sat down and I held the fucking string, and I absolutely made them arrest me. And I won that case with jury nullification. I admitted to the jury that it was my intentionally designed scheme to get arrested. So sometimes I think there may be a valid time to do it, but you're absolutely right that the risk is very high. And
let me put it like this, man. I'm gonna say that I said this earlier. Massa's gonna smack you if you get out of line mentality, and most cats that's doing this, at least that I know of, and you know, they already know that's a possibility. The first thing out of your mouth, Teresa, was you put your life at risk. You never know what you're gonna get. That's a given.